to be alive in this land of ours. Good to drive in this land of ours.
Hello, Canada hockey fans in the United States.
If it's 7 p.m. Eastern Time on a Thursday night, it's Hockey Time Machine. Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Paikin, coming to you tonight from Midtown Toronto. And on behalf of Paul and Laura and Glenn, we are delighted to welcome you to a show that is about one of the most controversial and some would say greatest injustices ever perpetrated on a Canadian hockey team in international competition. Let's set it up. The place is Innsbruck, Austria. The year is 1964. It's the Winter Olympic Games. And the question is, how did Canada get screwed out of a medal? We're going to answer that tonight. Here to help tell the story, we are delighted to welcome several members of that 1964 Canadian Olympic hockey team, starting in Waterloo, Ontario, with Rod Sealing. He played nearly 1,000 games in the NHL between 1962 and 1979 with the Leafs, the Rangers, the Capitals, the Blues, and the Flames. That's Rod Sealing. In Bemidji, Minnesota, Marshall Johnston. He played for Canada's national team in 64, 66, 67, and 68. He played in the NHL with the North Stars and the Golden Seals, coached the Golden Seals and the Rockies, and is a former general manager of the Ottawa Senators. In Sudbury, Ontario, Barry McKenzie played for Canada at the 64 and 68 Winter Olympics, coached the Sudbury Wolves and the Notre Dame Hounds, and was inducted into the IIHF and Saskatchewan Hockey Halls of Fame. Speaking of which, in Regina, Saskatchewan, Terry O'Malley. He played for Canada at the 64, 68, and 1980 Olympic Games, member of the IIHF Hall of Fame, coached at UBC in the late 80s and early 90s. And finally, from our nation's capital in Ottawa, Ontario, Paul Conlon, 1964 and 1968 Olympic team member, the pride of the St. Mike's Majors as well, and of Lucan, Ontario, where he's in the Hall of Fame there. Gentlemen, it is great to have all of you with us tonight on the Hockey Time Machine. And Rod Sealing, I wonder if I could just start with you and have you give us kind of the background that gets us to the big story tonight. Father David Bauer pulled together this team basically in 1963 at UBC because Canada had not been faring particularly well at international competitions. What was the problem and how was he trying to solve it?
Well, I think one of the other guys would be better to answer that question. I have my own. I was a late addition to the team. Father Bauer picked me up off the Marlies. I got to join the team for an exhibition game in Bratislava. And then the next day over to Innsbruck. So my history, I can tell you what I've read and what I know. But I think between Bear, Mo, and Marsh, they're much better positioned to give you the information you're looking for.
Fair enough. Barry McKenzie, you want to come in here and help put some flesh on that bone?
Well, I think Father Dave had really envisioned an alternative to junior A players. They were pretty well destined to go into the, sign a pro contract and go to go to the pros. And so I think that it was his idea of trying to combine, allow people such as ourselves to get an education and still playing an elite level of hockey. And so he was really instrumental in getting that was the key figure in getting the national team formed. And I would have to say, in the base of that 64 Olympics, his plan was a total success. We were beaten in the gold medal game 3-2. As I recall, one of our guys went down and hit the post, and they came back and got the winning goal. But when you saw the Russians celebrate after that game, they knew that they had achieved some kind of a very big success. And so, in my mind, Father Bauer's goals were accomplished. It might have changed things a hell of a lot if we had got if it hadn't been the 3-2 defeat. But we for a bunch of amateurs who weren't getting paid and playing against the Russians who were full professionals, we did pretty darn well.
I should say so. Marshall Johnson, I wonder if you could help pick up the story there, because while you guys ended up having a really good team, as Barry described it, you did play a 33-game exhibition schedule against junior teams in the lead up to the Olympics to try to get the team prepared. How much, in your view, did all of that truly prepare Team Canada for the kind of competition you would eventually see at the Olympics in Austria?
Well, I think it started in British Columbia, and we all lived together except for a couple of guys that were married. And we lived in an old radar house, and they added onto it it'll be a trailer house, I guess. And they had a bunch of showers in there and bathrooms and so on. And then we had a cook who cooked in the main house, and we all ate there. And then we traveled out of there for these games that you referred to. And of course, doing that, we were close all the time. And I think testament to that is the fact that we have had reunions. Guys, some of the guys can correct me, but I would guess it's pushing 60 years, 50 plus for sure, where we've had reunions. And of course, because we've lost a few of the Nats over the years, we've had them more regularly in the last half a dozen years. I hope that answers most of your question.
Yes, indeed. And we're glad that we've been able to provide a bit of a mini reunion here this evening. Paul, maybe you could pick up the story here. Team Canada eventually flies to Europe, January 1964. You play a 10-game pre-Olympic tournament, and your team ended up 5-4-1 in those 10 games. So I guess I want to know whether, based on that performance, you genuinely thought you were much of a medal threat coming up at the Olympics.
I think we all thought we were a medal threat. We all thought we were a gold medal threat. And, losing and not medaling as it turned out, not even getting the bronze medal was a big disappointment to us. But, I think the disappointment was a bit muted because it all centered around the bronze medal, when in fact, our goal was to win the gold medal, and we thought we could do it. We had a really, really great coach, Father David Bauer, and everybody was mentally and physically prepared for it. And if we had the final game against Russia, I think it was a 3-2 score. If we had scored 2 more goals against the Russians, we would have won the gold medal.
It was pretty nip and tuck, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I know we've been having some bandwidth issues to Saskatchewan, so let me make sure. Terry O'Malley, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but I can't hear everything breaking up. The other conversation's breaking up. I don't know if you can hear me, but
we do hear you. Let me try.
What the other answers have been broken up, and I couldn't really get a good grip on it.
Okay, let's try this then. Did you think Canada?
Yeah, we don't have the technology out here in Saskatchewan yet.
Yes, you do. Terry, tell me, did you really think you were a gold medal threat when you went to those Olympics in '64?
You're asking me?
I am.
Oh yeah, I mean we were in the hunt, and yeah, we were in the hunt, and it was they were close games. The Russians really had a quite a strong team, and we beat we beat the Swedes, and we lost 3-1 to the Czechs after they ran our goalie Seth Martin. But we were in the hunt, and it was the last game. It was touch and go. Although in the third period they really turned it on. We didn't get a lot of chances in the third period. It's interesting. There are a lot of good stories revolving around the team. I remember before the game we were playing bridge with Bobby Foran, Barry McKenzie, Roger Bourbonnais, and myself. And Bourbonnais and I were partners, and Barry McKenzie and Bob Foran were partners, and we were just trying to relax. And Barry trumped Bob Foran's ace. And he says, "You stupid SOB, you know." He said, "What are you doing?" And Barry didn't take kindly to that. And he turned the table over, the cards. He says, "I'm just trying to relax before the game, and now you're upsetting me," and stormed out of the room. So we were ready for the game. It was and we were in the hunt. If we'd got a goal, Father Bauer said afterwards, he was, when you really look back on it, what he tried to accomplish was quite heroic. And he said to us one time when we were all together, he says, "You guys," he says, "if you guys could have just got a goal at some crucial point in this endeavor of ours," he says, "I could have been a bishop, maybe even a cardinal," he said. So he took things with a sense of humor. He had, one of the best quotes ever that came out of this whole adventure of ours. After we went down to get the medal, and we were turned away, we got a 4th place certificate, which we all threw in the garbage. He took us all. He wanted to go to mass, so he took us all to church, and we came out of the church. And Mackenzie said to him, he says, "Father Dave," he says, "if you say this is providence, I'm going to punch you in the nose." And Marshall looked at him. He says, "Father, all I got to say is the shepherd and his sheep got fleeced." So he lived with those kind of remarks for years, and he really had a vision to change amateur hockey in Canada, and the team was going to be a kind of a flagship team that would say that education and hockey can go together.
Right.
And that was
Thank
his
you for
aim
those
and his
stories,
hope.
Terry.
And we were in the hunt right to the very end.
I want to fact check a couple of those stories with
Hey.
Barry McKenzie since he's right
Yeah.
here. So Barry, you want to weigh in on that issue of the card game?
Well, actually, it was kind of funny because I think we were
I don't know if
playing
you could
cards.
hear me, but everything else breaks up.
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead, Barry.
We were playing cards, but we looked outside, and the Russians were going through some calisthenics and working their butt off, and we were thinking, "Oh my God, these guys are in pretty good shape." And so I think that's, I guess, the difference. They were able to train, 12 months a year, and I guess some of my frustration with Bobby Foran ran over that time, but I tried to take a bit of that out on a few of the Russians later on that night.
Now, Rod Sealing, let me ask you, because you pointed out in your first answer that you were sort of a late addition to the team. How did you kind of get welcomed or not by the other members of the team and sort of brought inside the dressing room to be a member of the team, having arrived so late?
Well, the guys were very welcoming. It turns out that I arrived in Bratislava. It took me close to 4 days to get there. I flew. I was supposed to fly to the continent and join Maxey for an earlier game, and the continent was fogged in. So we landed in Scotland, bussed overnight into London, and I spent a day and a half there. And I was out sightseeing, watching the changing of the guard in at Buckingham Palace, and I got a tap on the shoulder and asked, "Are you Rod Sealing?" And I was kind of threw me back for a minute. Who would know me here? It was someone from the hotel, and I answered yes. Of course, he said, "You had to get back. The continent's opened up." They flew me direct to Prague, spent a night there, a day on the train going to Bratislava, and I walked into the dressing room just in time for the pregame skate, and that was my introduction to the team.
Did you know anybody on the team?
I knew a few. I knew the some Mike's guys. I knew Mo, and I knew Bear, and I knew Conk. So yeah, I knew a few guys already. Of course, I knew Father Bauer.
And there you are wearing number 3. Did you get your choice of number, or they just hand it to you?
You get what you get.
You get what you get. I gotcha. Well, we have seen some still pictures of all of you so far, and maybe it's time to look at some moving pictures and see some of Team Canada at the 64 Innsbruck Olympics in action. So, Glenn, how'd you like to run clip 1, please?
Gold at the 1964 Winter Olympics in Austria. No reason to think they couldn't do it. Sure, they weren't a club team like all the other hockey contingents that had represented Canada at previous games, but no Canadian hockey team had ever missed the Olympic podium.
It had to be 50 or 60,000 at the foot of the ski jump when they lit the flame.
Ken Broderick's photos, his jersey, they're all a little worn now. His memories of those Olympics are not.
I was in awe. It was, here we were decked out in our Hudson Bay coats, and we stood out like a sore thumb with these coats, and everybody was trying to trade for one and whatnot. Just to be there and be part of it was something you never forget.
Ken Broderick, one of the goaltenders on the team, along with Tom Harrington, who did the piece for CBC News. I want to ask you guys about one of the really controversial moments in this tournament. There were plenty, but there was a moment when a Swedish player named Carl Oberg, he broke his stick on the ice, and for whatever reason, he tossed it at the Canadian bench, and he clipped Father Bauer right in the head and cut him. Marshall Johnston, why don't you pick up the story there? How did the team react to that?
Well, you know, I just remember the incident, and of course, back in Canada, if that would have had piled off the bench after him, but that's all I can recall.
Paul Conlon, how about you? Do you remember it?
Yes, I remember the incident very vividly. I'm not sure why the Swedish player threw this stick at Father Bauer. I mean, I think he might have been frustrated. We were beating Sweden at the time, I believe. But I think the bear was ready to go out after him, and he got reined in by Father Bauer. Father Bauer sort of told all of us just forget about it and go on and play the game. And then that's what he did, and Father Bauer ended up getting a special award because of it.
Yes, he did. Now, Barry, do you want to pick up the story there? Did you want revenge when you saw that happen?
Well, I guess you'd say I didn't mind the physical game, and when you see a fellow that's revered as much as Father Bauer, and the affection we had for him, and I know there were a few of us on the bench that were ready to go out there, and Father Bauer, I can recall him saying, "Are you going to get him?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll get him." And he said, "Well, sit down." And so he was very definite about the fact that no retribution would be handed unless it was just in a normal hockey play.
Terry O'Malley, did you see it? Terry, did you see the stick being thrown at Father Bauer's head? Oh, it looks like we've got Terry frozen up there. We're going to have to come back to him later. Rod Sealing, how about you? Did you see the stick thrown at Father Bauer?
Line to come out of that.
No, I'm sorry, I don't remember.
The best line to come out of that.
But I do remember father's reaction, and I do recall him telling Bear to sit down. So I didn't see the stick come flying through the air. I saw it land on the bench, but I do remember the after, and is typical Father Bauer in his approach to the game. So not surprising when you look back at it in retrospect.
Barry, there was no penalty called on the play. Father Bauer, quite remarkably, invited the Swedish player to watch the Czech-Soviet game with him the following night. What do you think all that says about Father Bauer?
Well, I mean, you know, he was a priest, number one, and his approach to, you know, working with us was a total professional. We all had a great affection for him, and he had one for us. And so we were never surprised by something that he did like that. He, you know, he had a open heart, and you know, and a warmth about him. And so I don't think he wanted to have the Swedish player have to live with that on his record as being something that would be such a negative thing that had happened. And so that's why he welcomed him with open arms, and we accepted that. That was fine.
Paul, was there anybody on the team that tried to convince Father Bauer that he was wrong and that you guys should be allowed to go out there and get your retribution?
Well, if there was anybody, it would have been the Bear, but I think he acquiesced to Father's feelings that we should just let it pass. I mean, I think it was a deliberately thrown at Father Bauer. It may not have been. It may have been thrown in the direction of the Canadian bench and accidentally hit Father Bauer. But I think the team as a whole accepted Father Bauer's response to the incident, and if anything, the incident probably motivated us to carry on the game and to beat the Swedes, and that's what we did.
Well, let me take you to the next game, and I did mention that this was the first of several controversial things to happen in this tournament. In Canada's next game against Czechoslovakia, a Czech player crashed into, we heard this alluded to earlier, crashed into Canada's goalie, Seth Martin, took him out of the game. Ken Broderick, who we saw in that video clip earlier, had to come in and take over, but of course he was cold. He hadn't warmed up. Canada ended up losing the game, and its gold medal hopes went out the window as well. And I guess let's start here. I hope Terry O'Malley can hear me again. Terry, do you think that Czech player intentionally tried to hurt your goalie? And are we still having bandwidth problems in Saskatchewan?
You know, I really can't hear any of the questions. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear any of the conversation that's going on other than little blurbs. Although it seems to be you're asking about the Czech guy who ran the goalie.
That's right. Do you think he did it on purpose? Well, I don't think he tried to get out of the way. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And he did knock him out. And Seth had a bad shoulder before he went into the game. And that aggravated it, and he had to be pulled out of the game. It was that same shoulder when we played the Russians. He couldn't lift his glove arm. And then the third goal that the Russians got that game went over his shoulder. And he mentioned that was the arm that was the shoulder that was hurt, and that collision with Yuri. Was his name Yuri or Yurik? I can't remember. In any case, it certainly changed the complexion of the game, and it certainly put pressure on Ken Broderick, who was cold and had to come in off the bench and play right away. So it was too bad. It was just one of those things. Rod Sealing, were you on the ice or on the bench when that happened?
I don't recall where I was, but I'm just going back to the intent of the Czechs. Back in those days, I don't recall in international hockey a team that across the board played any dirtier or with more intensity in terms of that aspect of the game than the Czechs did, whether it was kicking, whether it was spitting, all stick work. So I go a little bit further than what Mo said. My guess is that the collision wasn't by accident, and they knew how integral Seth was to our game. And actually, Seth was my roommate during the whole Olympics, so I got to know Seth quite well and know how serious the injury was to that shoulder.
Do you recall talking to him after the game and asking him whether he thought the incident was intentional?
He didn't have an opinion, as I recall, but I certainly have one.
Which you've
And
expressed so well.
Excuse me, I might be
Yes,
able
Marshall,
to
please
add a
come in.
little. Yeah, that particular incident, it wouldn't have been Yuri Holick because he was a highly skilled center iceman, very highly skilled. There's a good chance it might have been his brother Yaroslav Holick, who is the father of the NHL player Bobby Holick. The other player on that team was the center iceman Guzonka. And it's quite possible he was the culprit, but I don't remember which one it was.
Barry McKenzie, how do you remember it?
Well, I remember when we played the Czech team in Sudbury. I'm digressing here, but the fans in Sudbury were cheering for the Czech team. There were more Czech people there than there were supporting us. But we were playing very well, and the game became very dirty. And that was the time that Father Bauer said to me, "Are you going to get somebody?" And he told me to sit down. But I think, Rod, you had come up and played with us that game, and I believe that you went down to block a shot, and I believe it was Joseph Golonka that was going to cross-check your in the face, and you got your glove up to prevent it. But we beat them quite handily in Sudbury, and they kept saying Bruno, and we didn't know what Bruno was. We thought it meant bear. But our first exhibition that we played was in Brno, Czechoslovakia, and so there's no doubt in my mind that they had the capability of doing whatever it was necessary to win.
Rod, do you remember that game in Sudbury?
No, I'll rely on Bear's memory. I've got a great memory, but it's gotten shorter as the years go on.
I think we can all probably say that.
It must have been somebody else then, Rod. I thought it was you.
I'm not doubting you.
Yeah. We do it.
Well, the next game in the tournament is the one that many of you have referred to already. That was the game against the Soviet Union, which Team Canada lost 3-2. And let's get some of the background on that one here. Glenn, you want to do clip 2, please?
And what happened in the game was that I ended up taking a penalty late in the game. And as I stepped back on the ice, we basically had killed the penalty. The Soviets scored, and we couldn't really get back into the game. And we ended up losing the final game. Everybody in that game left everything they had on the ice.
That's Brian Conacher, who is describing what he perceived to be his role in the defeat to the Soviets 3-2. I guess I want to start with Paul on this one and have him start by telling us, you guys went there to win gold, and you were right there with the Soviets, who were clearly the best team in the tournament, but just short. What was the dressing room like after that game?
Well, I think as you would expect, it was very subdued. Everybody was licking their wounds. Everybody thought we'd done fairly well, but not good enough. And we were all extremely disappointed. The other reaction we had, really, but we sat there for the longest time just staring straight ahead and nobody really saying a word to each other. But we went there to win the gold, and we didn't do it, and it was a huge disappointment for all of us.
Marshall, do you recall if Father Dave said anything to the guys after the game?
Well, my recollection was that we were going to get the medal. We came out of the dorms dressed in our Olympic clothes, and Father Bauer had gone in first and came out as we were walking into the arena. And I don't remember what he exactly said, but it was obviously might as well get back on the bus, so we did.
Barry McKenzie, do you remember any of the post game after that Soviet loss 3-2?
No, other than Conk pretty well hit it in the head. We worked all year long with the intent that we could win a gold medal, and I don't think any of us left anything out there on the ice that would have made anything different. And so it was one of total frustration and disappointment. But I know that there wasn't anybody out there who didn't give everything they had.
Well, we've already talked about the Swedish player throwing the stick at Father Bauer. We've talked about the Czech player running Team Canada's goalie. We've now talked about the disappointment of losing 3-2 to the Soviets in a game where Canada was right there. And as if things didn't get screwier and screwier, that wasn't the end of it. Let's go back to Tom Harrington as he picks up the story for what happened next. Glenn, clip 3, please.
To win gold, they had to beat the tournament favorites. But an early Canadian lead dissolved, and the Soviets went on to victory.
It was devastating. I think you could have heard a pin drop for half an hour in the dressing room.
But even as the Soviets celebrated, the Canadians still believed they'd won a medal. Of the 3 teams tied for second, the Canadian record, including the difference between goals for and against, appeared good enough for bronze, at least according to international hockey rules at the time. So the Canadians went back to the Olympic Village and dressed for the medal ceremony.
Okay, Rod Sealing, pick up the story if you would. Do you think at this point you're about to go get a bronze medal?
Oh, definitely. I can, for the rest of my life, I'll never forget the disappointment and the anger that I felt personally about literally being screwed out of a medal by a backroom deal by Bunny Ahern, who never loved Canada. And the infuriating part is in the interim years of Hockey Canada's abject failure to stick up for us and go fight for what is ours and what should be ours. And if it wasn't for Hockey Canada, it wasn't for Canadian hockey, many of their tournaments that they depend on to fund their operation would be nowhere. And yet still Hockey Canada will not do the right thing and fight for us to get the medal. And I didn't know about Conk's letter, but I know I've had numerous discussions with various presidents of Hockey Canada. And after you raise the subject, they quickly have something else to do, and they'll say, "I'll get back to you." You never hear from them again. So I know that night, on hearing it, a number of us decided that we should go out and have a drink. And if you know Father Bauer, up until that point in time was verboten, and we came back and we were well behaved. We had a couple of adult beverages and came back to our room, and each of us had on our bed a little note from Father Bauer saying, "Come and see me no matter what time you get in." And of course we did go see him, and he, in his own intimate way, expressed his disappointment on us showing our own frustration.
How did he tell that to you?
That's between Father Bauer and us.
Okay, understood. Paul Conlon, on that night, did you think after the game, well, at least we've won a bronze?
Yeah, so I think we all thought we'd won a medal. I somehow have a recollection that we thought we'd won a silver, but as we look back on the record, we would not have won a silver, but we certainly thought we were going to win the medal, and we got to the rink, and I think Terry or somebody alluded to it, that Father Bauer alerted us to the fact that we weren't going to get any medal, that the IHF in its wisdom had seen to change the rules. And I think his words were, "Okay, boys, let's get out of here." And that's what we did. And as Rod indicated, we went to one of the local establishments. We all had a few drinks, came back, saw Father Bauer, and we're very, very disappointed at the outcome. And we all felt we'd been screwed. I don't know why. Our representative, that was the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association at the time. It was not Hockey Canada then. There was, I think, Gordon Jukes and Art Potter were our representatives, and we saw them, and they told us the same thing Father Bauer told us. And I don't know why we or why CHA did not pursue the issue at the time, and why we had to wait why we waited 40 years to do it. I'm not sure. I guess it's our fault as much as anybody else's. Anyway, it was all a bit of a fiasco, and I thought we were unjustly not awarded the medal we thought we deserved.
Paul, do you want to be any more forthcoming about what Father Bauer had to say to everybody after the evening was over?
I think I'll support Rod in that. It's a team thing.
Okay, fair enough. Marshall, you wanted to say?
Yeah. My recollection of this was that those rules were changed halfway through the tournament, and it was the for and against rules. And why it was changed and voted on by the committee was because the for and against rules were against all of the teams in the tournament versus only the four medal qualifying teams.
Exactly right.
And Ahern threw a lot of weight, because he owned the travel agency in Britain that you had to go through for your transportation. All the teams had to go through his travel company for that. The success of Canadian teams previously obviously was dominant, and that probably contributed to his anti-Canadianism, and because the rest of the teams were in Europe and communist countries and so on, which obviously had a majority. And when they went back to try and talk to some of the committees on the international level, I can't remember names now, but a lot of them had died. And so when it came back, there was no chance, because they were dead. There was no chance you're going to get them to change their mind. But if you look in the records, in '64, Canada is world champion. Or not champion.
Third place.
Yeah. And obviously in the Olympics, we weren't. The record shows.
That was one of the screwy things about this, is that the Worlds and the Olympics were essentially the same thing back then. And you guys were apparently in third place at the Worlds, good for bronze, but fourth place at the Olympics, out of the medal. And how both those things can be right at the same time is a question.
In those years, their Olympic years, there was no world tournament.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Olympics served as both. Well, that's a very good explanation of the conundrum that everybody found themselves in. Let's go back to Tom Harrington from CBC. Sorry, Rod, you wanted to say?
It's my understanding that that the change was made during the medal game with the Soviets. It wasn't during the tournament, technically during the tournament, but it was actually during that game to ensure that Canada did not get a medal.
That's my understanding too, Rod.
Yeah. Let's go back to Tom Harrington from CBC News, and he explains the whole thing here. Glenn, let's run clip 4 here if we can, please.
The top 2 teams were clear. The Soviets had the gold, the Swedes the silver. But some last-minute confusion is obvious, as it's the Czech team that's late to accept the bronze. As for the Canadians,
we were waiting to go on to the ice surface, and somebody told us that we were not getting a medal, that we had come 4th, and that the Czechs had come in 3rd.
Let me explore this a little bit here. And Terry, I hope, have we got Terry O'Malley in Regina? I don't know if we've got him. Okay, let me go to Barry McKenzie then if we don't have Terry, because I know we've had some bandwidth problems to Regina all night. Barry, how did you guys get the news that no, you weren't getting a bronze medal? In fact, they had changed the rules midway through a game. You were now coming 4th. How did all of that did the team become aware of all of that?
Well, as I recall, we all of us have said that so often, as I recall, because we're all in our 80s now, and memories fading.
Rod is not yet, he would hasten to add.
Well, Rod, I'm sorry, Rod, that's right. But it's my recollection, and first of all, we say we were tied for second. Some people forget that we were tied for second, the 3 teams.
Yep, Czech, Swede, you guys.
And when we definitely felt that I remember thinking maybe we're going to get a silver, but as I can recall, we were on the bus going to the presentation ceremonies, getting ready to get off the bus, as someone has already alluded to, and we kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and getting quite anxious about things, and then Father Dave came by and said, "Oh, boys, we're down to the number 4," and as we got that wonderful piece of paper that I think some kids in Louisiana ended up getting, because I know we left ours lying around. We didn't cherish them too much, so I think it was when we were on the bus and going there to get a medal, and all of a sudden we're told that rules had changed, and part of the reason with this, when they went to goals for and against with all the teams, Father Bauer, when we were playing a team, if we got up by 5 or 6 goals on a team, he'd kind of want us to go practice a defensive system or something like that. He didn't want us to kind of run up a score. And so that would have affected us if we had maybe run up the score like the Soviets especially did. But again, that was part of Father Bauer's philosophy, is that you don't have to keep scoring goals. You can work on other aspects of your game and improve it. And so I'm long-winded about that. But anyway, it was on the bus that I think we were finally told that he didn't get anything.
And Paul, can you pick up the story there? The guys are on the bus. Father Dave tells you the new lay of the land. How did the guys all react in that moment?
Well, not very well, that's for sure. We all were convinced that we were going to get a medal, and we didn't. And yeah, great disappointment, and a lot of questioning. Well, why didn't we? Why were the rules changed? When were the rules changed? Did we dispute it? What is the situation here? And some of those questions still linger today. I mean, Bunny Ahern's gave his interpretation of the rules, this famous Article 27, I think, which I've never seen and has never been presented to us, but he interpreted that as meaning the rules weren't changed. He's just interpreted the rules in a way that gave the Czechs the medal. Well, I would love to see. I'm disappointed that we didn't have some kind of a hearing where we could sort of present our case and present our evidence in favor of us getting the bronze, which I believe we should have received.
Yeah, Rod Sealing, can you talk a bit about that? Did the guys, when they got the news, did they implore Father Bauer to negotiate with the IIHF, or what did guys want done at that moment?
Well, I think, as you can well imagine, the to a person was just utter disbelief that how could the CAHA at the time allow their own team to be treated like that. The decision was made. You couldn't undo it, so there's no asking or no reason to. But to have something, your dream, stolen from you, for want of a better term. I mean, this is a team that had one goal in mind, had worked their butt off for an entire year, had given up their life to come together, to move out to BC, to travel across, barnstorm across Canada, to come so close. And I truly believe, I mean, in my mind, we were the best team for 2 periods. That if we could have maintained the momentum that we had in those first 2 periods, we win. But sometimes cream does come to the top, and there's no disputing. Person to person, they had more talent than we did. But through Father Bauer's system, which he won a Memorial Cup on, he was very successful playing that way. We were successful as a team playing that way. We just, I don't want to say we ran out of gas, but we weren't able to maintain our, not dominance, but our ability to control the Soviets' style of play and keep them to the outside and to keep a handle on the play and the tempo on the play. And when they started to take over, that was it. But in terms of what happened to us, I still have a bitter taste in my mouth to this day. And I guess I'm going to die with that, because it appears that no one in Canada is prepared to stand up for this team that gave its all for the country. And to me, it's just, I'm still shocked by it. I guess I'll be kind and nice.
Well, I want to follow up on that a little bit later on, but yes, Marshall, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My recollection is kind of ironic, because had Al Eagleson represented the CHA at the time, I think that problem might have been solved right there at the Olympics. Moving on to that, the reality of this is we beat the Russians once in a tournament, and that was in the 1967 Centennial Tournament in Winnipeg. To my recollection, that's the only time in a major competition that we were able to beat that Soviet team that went, some of them, not all of them, went on to play in the 72 series against the best in the NHL.
Mm-hmm. Marshall, can I follow up with you on this? Because clearly you guys got screwed out of a medal here, and yet you came back and played for the Canadian national team again in 66 and 67 and 68. And I wonder why you decided to continue to play in an international system which had screwed you guys over already.
Well, speaking for myself, at that time, there were 6 teams in the NHL. And I knew that I wasn't good enough to play in the 6-team NHL. And after the Olympics, I was teaching school in Winnipeg for $5,500 a year. And I flew down and played 6 games at the end of that first year of expansion with the North Stars. And after that, they signed me to a pro contract, and then I played pro for about 7 years, I guess it was. And that was the way that was. And at that time, the remuneration that we got, some of the guys were teaching, but if you had to have a job, if you were teaching, that they would give you the time off. Fortunately, the school board that I taught for in Winnipeg gave me the time off for what I missed if I would pay the substitute teacher. And at that time, the cost to go to University of Manitoba was about a little over $2,000 board room tuition. And so, as it turned out for me, it was a wash. I got the $2,200. The substitute teacher, because of the time I missed for tournaments, etc., was within $100 of $2,200. So it was a wash for me. Yeah.
Gotcha. Barry McKenzie, I want to ask you the same question, because in spite of how disappointing the 64 experience was for you, you came back and played again in 68. How come?
Well, I think we became idealists, and Father Bauer was a very powerful communicator. And I believe that we still felt that we could achieve that gold medal dream. We felt we had a strong nucleus. I think because of the success that some people felt, Father Bauer and Jackie McLeod, who came on as coach, they were able to recruit some more offensive players. Because I think that our success in '64 was based on systems and the defensive style that we played. We didn't have a lot of great offensive players, and that's where, and so I think that we just felt that, now we had a few more years to prepare, and we could still achieve the dream of getting the gold. And so in '68, I still thought that we could win, and we ended up with a bronze that year. But I think I know that after '68, I kind of thought I think I'm going to stop chasing that dream now, and it's time to move on in another direction.
Paul, I should ask you the same question, because you too came back in '68 to give it another try. How come?
The tournaments in between '64 and '68. I guess our thinking was, okay, we got screwed there, but if we play in a tournament and we beat the Russians, we won't be in this predicament anymore. And maybe we thought that, all right, we got screwed once. Maybe we learned a lesson from it. Maybe the CAHA hockey administrators learned a lesson from it. Maybe there'd be a more a careful inquiry into the rules governing how ties are resolved. And so we just wanted to play hockey and win. We wanted to beat the Russians. That was really our goal. And if we'd have done that in any of the subsequent tournaments, we wouldn't be in that dilemma.
Gotcha. Laura, I wonder if you can give me a shot of everybody here, because thank you. I want to find out, because I gather after the tournament was over, Father Bauer arranged a meeting after the Olympics with Pope Paul VI. And I wonder whether any of you members of that team got to meet His Holiness.
I can start.
We all did.
I did.
Yeah, Marshall, why don't you start?
Well, after Innsbruck, we took a train down to Bolzano, played an exhibition game, and the money we got from that, we took a train to Rome, and Father Bauer had arranged an audience with the Pope.
And Paul, you met him as well?
Yes, we had a private audience with him. I have a picture down in my wall in the basement of myself kissing the Pope's ring. So I remember that very vividly.
How meaningful experience was that for you?
No, it was a great experience because I'm a staunch Catholic as well, and meeting the Pope was like meeting God, you know.
Rod, did you get a chance to meet him?
No, unfortunately, I had to go back. I made the trip to Bolzano and then a day in Rome. And then I had to fly back home to rejoin my junior team in request for the Memorial Cup. So I got to miss out on that. But it's one of the things I wish that I would have been around for. There's no question about that.
Indeed. Barry, how about you?
Well, I also have a picture, and I'm not a Catholic, and it was kind of unusual there. I am kissing the Pope's ring, and a funny story about that is that Father Bauer kept saying, "Well, we're going down. This is my territory. You know, this is where I'm the big boss." And we were in line waiting to go to see the Pope, and I forget who his bodyguards were. You, Marcia Conk, might know what their names were, but anyway, one of the bodyguards says, "Where is Seith Martin?" You know, and Father says, "I'm even second to Seth Martin now in my home territory." So,
Marshall,
it was quite an honor anyway to go there.
Sure. Marshall, do you recall what it was like for Father to meet the Pope?
Well,
I'm sure who you're talking.
I can't speak for him, but I would have to say that this was a most special opportunity for him. I don't know how else to explain it.
For sure. Okay, gentlemen, let me take you more to today, because there have been some efforts undertaken over the years to rectify this injustice. There was an attempt not that long ago by Hockey Canada, Rob Nicholson in particular, to at least get you guys 1964 World Championship bronze medals, if not the Olympic bronze medal. And I want to get some understanding from you four as to how effective or useful or satisfactory any of those efforts were. Rod, do you want to start us off?
Well, I guess given that none of us have one of those medals, I think that speaks for itself. So I don't want to be uncharitable, but they need to do more and better work before all of us are gone.
Paul, how about you on that?
I think, Hockey Canada, Rob Nicholson and Mary Costello made a fairly determined effort to try to right that wrong. And they were initially successful at the first conference in 2005. The IHF decided, you should get the World Championship bronze medal. And unfortunately, that decision didn't last very long. And I think it didn't last very long because in our communications with Hockey Canada and I guess indirectly with the IIHF, we indicated, well, this was not just a World Championship tournament. This was front and center Olympic tournament. And so if you decide we should get the bronze for the World Championship, we should get it for the Olympics. And it was that thrust to get the Olympics, which would have meant that the IIHF would have had to go to the Canadian or to the International Olympic Committee and say, hey, we made a mistake. This should go to Canada, not to Czechoslovakia. The IIHF, I think, decided they weren't prepared to do that and weren't prepared to admit a mistake. They didn't want to take a bronze medal away from Czech team, and since that's what we had indicated we were after, we weren't that concerned about getting the World Championship bronze. I think because of all of that, we ended up getting nothing.
Barry, what do you make of Hockey Canada's efforts over the years to try to rectify this?
I'm sorry?
What do you make of Hockey Canada's efforts over the years to rectify this situation?
You know, I'm kind of at that stage in my life where it's kind of water under the bridge. I live with the fact that we got shafted. I think there was an effort made. I think Conk has hit the nail on the head with his assessment of it. Yeah, if we didn't get the bronze, which we felt we deserved, let's forget about it. You know, we're never going to get that bronze in '64, which we deserved, and let's not beat a dead horse, so to speak.
Marshall, have the guys, to the best of your knowledge, essentially given up on this quest to get themselves their bronze medals?
Yes, I think as Bear mentioned, it's water under the bridge. But I don't think there's anyone on that team or future teams with Father Bauer that regret the opportunity that we had. I think that a little frustrating for me is Hockey Canada now. Congratulate Hockey Canada for the success they've had. 72 series, World Championship since, Olympics since, and so on. And the players deservedly received nice things, whether it's a ring or the medal or whatever. And so we go to bed every night knowing that, hey, we give it our best. Wasn't quite good enough, but I wouldn't trade the opportunity, the experiences, the friends, the teammates for any kind of medal.
Rod Sealing, if I can make this observation, you still seem much more outraged at the injustice of all of this than some of your teammates are. How come?
I just, it's an injustice. It's first of all, it's always a thrill and an honor to represent your country. And it was a great honor to play in '64. I loved playing with the guys. I didn't spend a lot of time with them. I was in and out very quickly. But to have something ripped away from you the way it was just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. And I'm one that I always want to fight for what's fair and what's right. And this is fair and this is right and it's just. And I don't think that now Hockey Canada should let it lay. We're into another Olympic year. Why not take another run at it? They need Canada. Canada brings a lot to that tournament. It's time they own up. If it was a mistake was made, it was made, but make it right. And Marsh, just as a correction about how Hockey Canada is treated its representatives in World Hockey events. The 72 team, we had to buy our own rings. We got nothing from Hockey Canada.
Isn't that interesting? Wow. Okay. I'm not sure anybody knew that. You had to buy your own rings for the victory over the Soviets in '72.
We did.
Do you recall how much those cost?
I do, but I'll just, we didn't have a lot of
money. The Eagle probably got some.
I'm going to let that go because we don't want to get sued here.
I don't know anything about that.
Exactly right. Barry McKenzie, at this point in the story, I mean, it's a lot of years later now. It's almost 60 years later. How much hope do you think the guys on your team hold out for the possibility that this will ever be properly resolved someday?
Zero.
And why is that?
I have no hope. I think I know Conk was more involved with the thing when people were looking at it. I think he said in 2005, and I think I felt at that time that it was going to get resolved in the correct manner, and I think it was looked into. Enough strings weren't pulled in the right direction, and the answer came out that no, nothing is going to be resolved in our favor, and I have no hope that it's going to get resolved in any other way. I would doubt it's going to get brought up again.
Paul, can you help us understand that a bit better? Because there were efforts undertaken. It looked as if part of the injustice was going to be dealt with, and then for whatever reason, nothing happened. What happened?
Yeah, well, the ball was sort of in Hockey Canada's court. They were acting in our behalf, and as I indicated earlier, I thought they made a good initial effort, and but once the initial decision to award us the bronze medal, that was the World Championship bronze medal, once that was overturned, there didn't seem to be a whole lot of appetite in Hockey Canada to pursue it any further. And I, for one, was disappointed in that. I thought it should have been. There's a lot of unanswered questions. They sent us the minutes of the meeting that was held during. I think it was either during or after the final game against Russia, where the administration supported Bunny Ahern's interpretation of the bylaw that you had to count goals for and against amongst all the teams in the tournament, not just the four medal contenders. And that was apparently supported, as I recall it, by a vote of 6-3. The interesting thing about that was the Czech representative, a guy named Subert, I think his name was, he supported Canada's position. Canada, Russia, and Czechoslovakia supported Canada's interpretation of the bylaw. They should have got the bronze, but there were 6 contrary votes against this, and I'm disappointed to say one of the teams that voted against us was the Americans. The U.S. voted against it as well. So anyway, that Hockey Canada, I think, might have been able to pursue that a little more vehemently. And they didn't. But I think I agree with Bear and Marsh that for most of us now, I think it's water under the bridge, so to speak. It's what now, 50 some odd years later, and we all know we won the bronze, and even though we don't have it in our hearts, we have the bronze medal, and I guess that's important. And what's important is that more important now is that we set a date for our next reunion.
Which is when? When's the next reunion?
I don't know.
Oh, I see. Know. That's the important thing to do, is to set that date.
That's the important thing to do, yeah.
Right. But you really have made your peace with the fact that this is not going to work out the way you want?
Well, I'm prepared to do whatever is necessary to push it forward, but it's in the Hockey Canada's hands, and I don't think there's any appetite there to move forward with it.
Can we explore that a bit? Marshall, why do you suppose Hockey Canada has not really put all of its force and backing behind this effort?
First of all, it's financial, like most everything else in the country. Being what hockey is in Canada, the importance of it, the prestige, Canada's game, that type of thing. This will never happen. But for us, in those years, because we had amateur status, there'll never be another Canadian team represented by amateurs, which, if it were at that time for us, we'd have been out of luck, a lot of us, majority of us, because very few went on to be successful NHL players. Personally, a hanger-on, me, and I'm sad about that. Yeah, I would like to have the same opportunity that I had, and that will never happen.
As you look back, Marshall, at your hockey career, where does participating in this 1964 Olympic tournament rate in terms of your hockey memories?
It's got to be near the top, if not the top. I was playing at the University of Denver, and we had our final in Boston, and it was during spring break, and I flew home to Saskatchewan, and on the plane were some of, might have been UBC players, because Terry O'Malley was there. And I don't know why I struck up a conversation with him, because I wasn't interested in history or hearing about anything else. But anyway, we got talking about hockey, told him, and he said, well, he said there are going to be tryouts for the 64 Olympic team. So told me about Father Bauer. So I says, well, throw him my name, which he did. And Father Bauer contacted me, and along with, I don't remember, maybe 35, 40 players, we went to Edmonton in July for a training camp. And then from there, we went 20-some players to UBC, where we trained and lived, as I mentioned before.
Gotcha. Barry McKenzie, can I ask you where the participation in the 64 tournament, even with all of the negative things that happened, where does that rank in your hockey career of memories?
Well, I've spent 22 years at Notre Dame, where I was fortunate enough to coach a number of extremely good hockey players and win a couple of tournaments. And so I haven't any hockey successes I've had. I cherish them all. But there's no doubt that right very near the top is that experience in 64. That whole experience, and as Marsh mentioned earlier on, we've had some of our guys have gone on to play pro hockey and do very well, and some of them, like Marsh and I, had a brief fling at it type of thing. But I think that the way that team was approached, and with Father Bauer's guidance, the fact that we have reunions every 2 or 3 years, I think is a testament to the fact that it was something so significant to all of us, and we've cherished the memories that we had with one another over the years. If you get together with us at a reunion, we still think we're gold medal winners, even though we really have only won the bronze. And so it's right up there. That's one of my highlights, no doubt about it.
And when you get together for these reunions, what percentage of your teammates show up?
It really goes from the team from 1964 through to 68, and then the team it folded in 70, and then like Terry O'Malley played in the 80. Olympics.
Yes, he did.
That was still part of the Father Bauer's, dream. And so there's players that show up from all throughout all those years. We've had Glennie Anderson has come back to one of our reunions, and we have a pretty good percentage. There's no doubt a hardcore, about 8 to 10 of us that start off with that 64 team that are kind of the hardcore guys. But we still cherish those memories. And as Conk says, this pandemic has curtailed some kind of reunion, but we've got to get the next one going, because Marsh is very talented with the spoons. And we've got to get that going again.
Marshall and the spoons, eh? Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to add to that.
Please.
He wasn't on he was on our national team in '65, but a fellow by the name from Newfoundland, George Faulkner, played with us in that tournament in Ljubljana. And
Marshall, put your hand down. We can't see you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
There we go.
George, I have to say, is probably as responsible, even though we only played 1 year, for our reunions, because he's an entertainer. He's a guitarist and a singer, and he told me a couple of weeks ago he's got a banjo now, and he's 86 years old, and he's still living, not in good health, but in the Bishop's Falls. Actually, that's where his home. He's living with his sister now, but he had a home in St. John's, and we've been out there for 2 reunions. One, I don't know, 20 years ago or more, and then one just about 4 years ago. But I had to mention him because of his significance in contributing to our reunions.
Good. Thank you for putting that on the record. I should ask Paul and then Rod where this ranks. Paul, to you first. The 64, your participation in it, where that ranks on the pantheon of your hockey memories.
Well, 1964 is high in my memory rankings. It's good and bad, I suppose. Bad because we ended up not getting a medal and not getting the gold medal, and it's good because it was the start of the national team program, which I participated in for the next 5 years till the end of the 1968 Olympics. And that team and Father Bauer and what he brought to the team and what the team members brought to me and to each of us is a great thing, and it's a test, and the reunions that we have are a testament to that. But it all goes back really to Father Bauer. What a tremendous person he was, and how much he influenced the lives of all of the players during that period of time. And so 1964 is big in my memories.
Since you brought up Father Bauer again, I'm going to ask Glenn Dreyfus to play clip number 5, because that's Brian Conacher talking about Father Dave. If you would, please, Glenn.
The greatest regret in sort of reflecting on it is that Father Bauer isn't still with us to enjoy and participate in this. I mean, it's an interesting thing. While all of us played for Canada on that team in 1964, which was the original Canada's national team, we all played for Father Bauer. I mean, he literally gave his life and his soul to that team. And at the end of that experience of playing for Father Bauer, he left an indelible mark on every player that he ever came in contact with.
Rod, how much do you miss the fact that he's not at your reunions?
Well, let me go back to your original question. We're comfortable. Anytime you get to put the sweater on to represent your country, it's a great honor. So the fact that I was able to do that in 1964 is obviously a highlight. And, you know, not having Father Bauer here to see what he created and what's left of it, of his dream, is certainly a missing part of it. Ironically, living here in Waterloo, the street I live on is Father David Bauer Drive, so I'm close to home.
Isn't that something? You really live on Father David Bauer Drive.
I do.
That is amazing. Did you do that on purpose?
My wife did.
Isn't that terrific? All right. Well, let me ask you I mean, no disrespect to your teammates, but the fact is you did play on Team Canada 72. You did have nearly 1,000 games in the NHL. So you have had a lot more kind of red letter moments in your professional hockey life than some of your teammates have. Where does the 64 Olympics, the injustices notwithstanding, rank on your list of hockey memories?
Oh, it's right at the top. Obviously, because we won in 72, that is right there. But a close second is 64. And again, as I said, I got to represent my country. And when you stand in the blue line and they play your national anthem, it gives you a real sense of pride and accomplishment, obviously, because you've had to be proficient to get to that level. But being able to be there with the guys is certainly something that I've never forgotten, never will forget. And it is a big hole, what happened in that last game and the way it happened. Losing you can always, in some way, explain. Maybe it's a crutch, maybe not. But we did. While we didn't win the gold, we certainly was deserving of whether it was silver or bronze. We deserved to be a medalist, and we didn't. It was taken from us. We didn't lose it. It was taken from us. So that, to me, makes it somewhat different, but still special.
Well, let me follow up with you on that, Rod, because here's a quirky reality. Had you won the bronze medal as you should have that year, it's quite possible that 57 years later, we would not still be talking about it. We are still talking about it all these years later because you guys got screwed. And in a way, it's kind of kept your contribution to Canada alive. Do you ever see it that way?
Well, I prefer to think about it in a bit of a different way. I recognize what you're saying and don't disagree. But I prefer to think about it that if we had won and we were so close to winning, what that would have meant to hockey in Canada in the years to come. That Father Bauer, through his dream, was able to take a bunch of amateurs and compete against what was then unquestionably the world's best team, a professional hockey team that played 12 months a year, and what we came so close to accomplishing. And it's unfortunate that the powers that be didn't see the rationale for continuing that, because I don't think, if you want to call it the wilderness years, Canadian hockey would have gone through on an international basis if that team had been allowed to grow, because we were just the start of it. And to have given it what it was due and given it the resources that it needed to grow and prosper. Because I've always believed that one can and should be able to combine a hockey career and an education. Mm-hmm. And that was, to me, our last effort, really, at being able to prove that on an ongoing basis.
Understood. Barry McKenzie, can I get you to weigh in on that? The notion that we might not still be talking about this if everything had gone according to Hoyle, but because you guys faced that injustice, we're still talking about you.
I guess I prefer to think in terms of what Rod has said. Really, I think the injustice is done. I can't see it resolved. I just have often thought, we were so damn close to beating them, to getting the gold. We were pretty close, and for a bunch of amateurs, playing against, the pros that, Rod's team had such a hard time to beat in '72. We did a pretty darn good job, and I think that Father Bauer's, dream was just to help make sure that kids that were playing hockey would keep education in their mind and use hockey and education together. And I think it's improved a lot. The major juniors are doing good things with offering scholarships to kids and stuff like that. But my thoughts are more, we were so damn close to getting that gold that I'm not, I don't want people to forget about that we were a pretty good hockey club, and that's, to me, the success of the team was that we didn't quite get over the hump.
Very good. Marshall, how about you?
Steve, can I just
oh yeah, please, Rod, go ahead.
I don't want someone to think that I'm bitter about. I'm not happy about getting screwed out of the medal, but I have a bigger regret about losing the medal game, because I'm with Bear. To me, the more disappointing aspect of that whole experience was losing the gold medal game, not losing the medal, because we were close, and we were damn close.
You were one goal away.
The reason you see the Soviets jumping for joy at the end of the game, because they knew how damn close they were to losing to us.
Yeah.
Marshall, let me get your take on that. The fact that we're still talking about you 57 years later, which we might not be doing had you got the medal at those games.
Well, thanks to Paul for giving us the opportunity to speak and to see good friends. It's been very nice, very nice. I have a picture in my office. I look at it every day, and it's of the bronze that we did receive in '68. And I'm on the podium with as a bronze medal with Boris Myrov, the Russian, with gold, and Golonka with the silver. And I'm not smiling. And I got off the podium, and there was a gentleman from the Canadian Olympic Committee came over to me. I don't remember the name or anything. And he said, "Well, you weren't smiling." And I said, "No, I guess I wasn't smiling." I said, "I apologize for that. I'll go back and put a smile on if you want." I said to him something to the effect, "Last 4 years," I said, "we've had a lot of disappointments. And in '64, we had a big disappointment." And I said, "I didn't feel like smiling in '64.
That's a very poignant story. Thank you for that. Gentlemen, we are just a couple of minutes away from finishing, and I have a feeling I should give the last 2 minutes to Rod Sealing, because we've talked a lot tonight about reunions and getting together. And next year, Rod, is a pretty big reunion for a group of guys that you played with 50 years ago. Are there any plans afoot for a reunion for that?
Yes, there are, Steve. People are as we speak, working on reunion. We've had get-togethers over the years quite often, and again, as with the '64, it's the guys that made it. You go to war with your teammates. It's a lifelong bond. You never lose it, and one that I'm quite looking forward to see guys and tell tales and and remember how good it was, and what the elation that we all felt about after having been written off after leaving Canada when no one even wanted to know us, and coming back, winning that series.
Well, you know, in Canada, we love you, win or tie.
So true. Winners laugh and tell jokes.
I think next year is going to be absolutely massive. It's going to be massive. 50th anniversary of course, the Team Canada Summit Series against the Soviet Union. I want to thank Rod Sealing and Marshall Johnston and Barry McKenzie and Paul Conlon and, of course, Terry O'Malley as well, whose bandwidth unfortunately just did not allow him to spend the whole evening with us. This was a very nostalgic evening. We are very happy to have been able to spend so much time with you guys and remind people who are watching about the significance of what you achieved back in 1964 and the fact that an injustice still needs to be righted. And we'll continue to tell that story in the hopes that someday it may be. At this moment, it is our tradition to bring on Glenn and Laura and Paul for their final words and observations, and then we say so long. There's Paul Patsko. Paul, you want to unmute and just say hi to the gang?
There, okay. Thanks, gentlemen. It was fantastic, and we are going to keep it alive. There's no doubt about it, because you guys were shafted, and I always thought that Bob Nicholson should have given you their own bronze medals, just made them give it, and the heck with what the IHF or whatever said. They should have done that. He didn't, but this all started in 2005. We did all kinds of things to get it going, and it was looking good for a while, but we didn't succeed in the end. As for the 1972 reunion, yeah, well, we're involved in that, Rod. We've got a book. We've got the 4-part documentary that's going to be announced pretty soon, and all kinds of other stuff. So I'm looking forward to attending the launch or the celebration, and I've already made arrangements for 2 tickets for that.
Who's the documentary for, Paul?
Well, it's the reunion, 50th anniversary, 4 parts.
For who? For CBC?
Yeah, I guess. See, you said it, I did. I won't get into trouble because you said it, not me. Okay. So I can't wait to announce it. And it's going to be fantastic because we're also going to do the Russian point of view. And I think for tonight, last week I had mentioned how we were already suspicious going into 72 about the officiating and everything. And 64 was certainly part of that suspicion. So I hope people understand that.
Good stuff. Glenn Dreyfus, come on in here.
Thank you, Steve. You know, the phrase that stuck with me throughout tonight's program was Father Bauer's dream. And these guys were too modest to say so, but I have to believe that a big part of Father Bauer's dream was helping to mold men of integrity and character. And the folks we spent the evening with tonight have certainly displayed that. And in that sense, Father Bauer's dream was certainly realized because of the integrity and class that they've shown, discussing what had to be bitterly disappointing to them. And the words integrity and class, when you discuss those 2 words, I think there is no place that integrity and class are less embodied than in international amateur athletic associations. So unfortunately, hearing these stories, it is by no means a surprise to me that there were, for lack of a better word, shenanigans that went on. And those organizations, to this day, the corruption, the lack of transparency, well, we could do a whole other program, but I think you get the idea. These guys represented the best of international athletics, much better than the organizations that were supposed to be supporting them. So I salute each and every one of them.
Well said, Glenn.
You said Murray Costello has joined us.
I was just going to say, I note that Murray Costello has joined us, the legendary Murray Costello, former head of the CAHA and Hockey Canada, Hockey Hall of Fame, IIHF Hall of Fame, Canada Sports Hall of Fame, former NHLer himself. Murray Costello, maybe you could just give us an update as to where things are at in terms of getting rings and justice for these guys.
Well, it's nowhere right now, Steve. It's a problem that they looked at and they decided against taking any action on it, and it's a done, closed deal as far as they're concerned. I see Marshall Johnson there too, Marshall.
Indeed.
Anyway, I don't know where you've been with all of your conversation and how you went through this. I was contacted a long time ago, and we went through this, and I arranged a hearing for them in front of the council of the IHF, and I was there for that. I'm not sure who actually spoke for the players on that or the team, but part of the problem was all of the people around the table except one were not around during the 64 Innsbruck time, and the new people were not about to take the lead on something that they knew nothing about. And Miro Schubert was the Czechoslovakian representative, now the Czech Republic, but he was in his final year of being on the council, was quite elderly and was kind of losing it a bit. And he resigned shortly after, and within a year, he had passed away. But he was an honest guy, and he had a lot of empathy for the Canadian position on it. But he was in a very awkward position. First, he was elderly and rather feeble, and he was going to have to go home and tell his own federation that, you know, those medals you got from 1964, well, they're not yours any longer. You got to give them to Canada. And he was going to be very reluctant to try and take that message back home.
Why don't they just do what the Olympics did a few years ago when I remember our figure skaters got screwed out of a medal because of some shenanigans among the judging, and they just decided to award 2 gold medals. Why don't they just do that for these games?
Well, as a matter of fact, we did that. I don't know if any of the guys on the call were part of the presentation to the council, but one of the things that they had on their mind and I think introduced, and there was 2 of us, Walter Bush with USA Hockey and myself, who thought that would be a good solution to the whole thing. We didn't want to take anything away from the Czech Republic because they were honest competitors at the time, but we thought they could award a second group of bronze medals for a team that actually won it. The difficulty here was, Bunny Ahern was not a very nice guy, and he had a real chip on his shoulder when it came to Canada. He just felt Canada was too strong, had too much strength, had too big a say in the ongoing business of the IHF, and he looked on the IHF as his own play toy, if you will. He had a travel agency, made everybody book their travel through him, and he just did whatever he wanted. And he was very abrasive in talking to him. He's very aggressive, and you couldn't really have a decent conversation with him. Anyway, he decided to do this, and he somehow looked at the language in the book and took some kind of a narrow interpretation that he thought was all right, and he reversed it so that Canada was out of the medals. And I think he did it out of spite.
But I remember reading comments from René Fossell not that long ago in which he said, we've taken a look at this, and we understand there is a problem here, and we intend to fix it. How come nothing happened after that?
Well, when they had the conversation after the presentation by the Canadian delegation, and they left the room, and the council had a rather lengthy discussion on the whole thing, and both Walter Bush and myself said, this is a problem. It should be solved. If we made a mistake and we realize it's a mistake, we should do our best to correct it. So went around the table and around, and the new people on the council who were not around in 64 at all, they did not want to take the lead in this in any way, and something that they didn't know about and weren't there when it happened. But finally it came down, and there was Fossell himself who said, look, he said, I realize that they have a reasonable request here. And my concern on this is that if we open the door on this, we're going to get besieged with a whole slew of concerns that happen at almost every championship that we play in. And each year at that time, there were 26 to 28 championships at the various levels of the game. and there's all kinds of problems that come up. Everything from illegitimate players, illegitimate passports or credibility things, things that happened in the game, things that happened with the referees. There were times when pucks were shot and went through the mesh on the net because it wasn't tied tight enough. But once the game is over and the referee signs the game sheet, that's kind of locked in from that point on, and it's hard to overturn without some really good knowledge and reason to do it. Now, there was a reason enough here, but Costello said, my concern is if we open this up, we're going to have a whole series of them that follows, and rather than us try to redo history, we should accept the decision the way it was made, the council made it, and live with it so that we don't get into that Pandora's box of having something come up every year after that.
Okay,
So
let me ask you two more quick questions. What about the notion that you don't have to solve all of the injustices in the world, but you should at least try to solve some of them? Has anybody made that argument to them?
Well, the argument was made that if a mistake was made, and if it was made deliberately, and we believe that it was, we should do our best to correct it. It doesn't matter about anything else. We should try and do that. But he kept going back to that. And I remember, looking through all of this, and as the guys came to me to say, get us a hearing and let's get this thing going and see if we can change their mind. I remember something that Trudeau Sr. said in a similar type thing in politics in Canada back in, I think, around 84. He said, and I kept this quote, as a matter of fact, because it struck me there that this might come up this way. He said, I do not see how I can apologize for some historic event to which we or these people in this house were not a party. We can regret that it happened, but I do not think it is the purpose of government to write the past. It cannot rewrite history. It is our purpose to be just in our time. We were all in that predicament because none of us were there to see actually what happened and how he manipulated that wording to make it come out the way that he was able to convince the rest of the council that the Czech should get the medal and the Canadians should be out. I really do think it was done in spite on his part, but there was nobody to stand up to him at that time, and trying to do it 45 years later is difficult.
Or even 57 years later, which is where we are now. My last question for you, Murray Costello, is why doesn't Hockey Canada just strike its own bronze medals, have its own ceremony, and give these guys what they've deserved?
That's not a bad thought. That we should put that proposition to them, and they might well consider that, because everybody knows that was at all reasonable that this was manipulation in the worst way, and it was done with ill motives, and it wasn't done with any kind of fairness or trying to do the right thing. It was just there's kind of an underlying grudge that goes on over there when you're dealing with them on a regular basis. That against Canada, because Canada comes in and Canada is very strong. We claim the game as our own, and they think we come in a little too strong and we have the answers to everything. It's not true, but we do have strong teams. We compete all the time. We're near the top at it. There's a bit of resentment that flows on that, and if they have a chance to put it to Canada, some are willing to do it very readily, and that's unfortunate the way it is, but that's more the truth than not.
Understood. Laura, thank you for opening up to a wide shot there. And I'm happy, before we sign off tonight, if any of our previous guests want to say or ask anything of Murray Costello, here's your moment.
Well, no, Murray answered some of the concerns that I had right now. So thanks a lot, Murray.
Can I just say something, Murray? You indicated that Fazell's position is they didn't want to right this wrong because he was afraid of future incidents coming up and having people in the future raise the similar concerns. It strikes me that that's not a very good reason for denying, for refusing to right this wrong when it is generally accepted that yes, there was a mistake here. We should have got the bronze medals.
I know what you're saying, Paul, and I agree with you. But I think you have to try and put yourself in the shoes of the others, and particularly the president at the time. There weren't an awful lot of things that I really agreed with Costello on, but they have championships down to A, B, C, and D levels, and the kinds of things that go on at all of those. Almost every year, there's at least 3 or 4 concerns that are serious enough that one side gets unfairly treated in a decision made, and one that they have trouble opening up, and they don't want to go back. They don't want to start doing that. And the easy answer for them was the one they took, that just say, we got enough problems today dealing with the game for us to go back and try and right wrongs that are that far gone, and with nobody there who can really justify or stand behind what we're trying to do other than the country involved, and perhaps the U.S., because again, over there, when they look at America, they see Canada and U.S. as one. And they just say we vote to support each other in almost everything we do. But the rest of them, they're quite ready to go the other way on the slightest thing. And I don't know. I don't know how you'd open it up in a way that that would be convincing. You could give it another go if you want, but you have an even younger council now in there with people that have no idea what took place in '64 and had no idea of the Father Bauer dream and the quality guys that tried to make it happen and came so very close with amateurs playing against full-time pros like the Russians and Czechs. We argued that for years, and they used it against us all the time. We couldn't have even American Hockey League players, and they were having guys that played hockey 11 months of the year, and you guys played against those guys. So, we're in deep when it comes to trying doing a favor for Canada. Is what it comes down to.
Rob, did you want a word?
I'm sorry to have to say that.
Very good. Well, let me ask Laura if she wants to assume her traditional role here of coming on in and giving the last word, as we always like to give to Laura Evans. There she is.
Sorry, I was juggling some things. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure to hear all your stories and your memories, and we would love to be a part of your reunion whenever you're able to do that. If you liked our content tonight, can you click the like button down below? And if you click the subscribe button and the little bell, it'll notify you every time that we go live. So every Thursday at 7 p.m. we go live, and we'll have a different show for you. So thank you very much. Glenn, if you'd like to have anything else to say, or you had your last word, or Paul, it's up to you.
I'm looking for that light that you said.
When you get out of the studio, then you can click the like when you're on YouTube.
I had to go to a different computer to get on. I couldn't get on. It wouldn't let me in. So I got my daughter's computer, and she made it happen. I don't know how she did it, but that's the way it is.
Young
I'm
kids
glad for the reunions because Grant Moore had organized and Ricky Noonan had organized the last reunion in Newfoundland, I think. Yeah, you guys were there, and I provided the video for that. So I'm, whatever you need from us, we're ready to help out. Okay, don't worry about that.
I think we should send this tape to Hockey Canada and tell them just strike your own medals. To hell with everybody else. Just get it done.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight. This was a real joy.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Good seeing you.